you want to ask a question, line up. If you don't, you get to sit down.
Congressman Sherman.
Hello, good, easiest question ever.
Hi.
Oh, and tell me your name and what town you live in.
My name is Dr. Richard Goldman. I'm a diagnostic radiologist. I practice in Santa Monica and Santa Clarita. And my question is, if you can save $109 million in Medicare, would you do it? And the corollary to that is, I'd like you to support HR 2914, sponsored by Congresswoman Spear, promoting integrity in Medicare Act 2013. I've already contacted her office previously, but I'm here today to also promote that.
Thank you. I'll talk to Jackie on the floor about our bill, and if it saves $109 million, that's a very strong reason to go sponsor it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve from Porter Ranch. For years, the government has been ripping off the Social Security plan, and they're saying it's broke because of old farts that are just living too long and using up the money. But yet, there's introducing a bill in the House or the Senate, S-567, which wants to increase Social Security payments by about $800 a year. And the question is, if you're broke, where's this money going to come from to pay this $800? I mean, you've taken the money out from the Social Security in the past, and the money to pay it back comes only from one source, the taxpayer. Okay, so it's like taking money from the...
Let me, S-567 is a Senate bill, hasn't even come to the House for consideration. I tend to study the bills I'm likely to be voting on. The Social Security Trust Fund does not have extra money. I've been an advocate of one thing, though, that would cost it money, and that is treating our teachers and police officers in California fairly, where they face these offsets. As to whether Social Security Trust Fund monies have been, quote, ripped off, they have invested in U.S. government bonds, and let's put it this, I invest in U.S. government bonds. It's not a bad investment. And in the most recent year, Social Security has paid out more than it was receiving in contributions or taxes because the general fund began paying that money back. And the reason that was necessary was, I guess, people a little bit older than me beginning to retire. The baby boom is beginning to retire. The Social Security Trust Fund will decline over the next couple of decades. And Social Security has far less of a problem than a number of other things we have to worry about. But ultimately, we're going to have to figure out a way to get more revenue into the Social Security system or to deal with it. But you're right, we don't just have $800 for everybody, although I'd love to go sponsor a bill, especially if it was $800 just for those who live in the 30th Congressional District.
Mr. Sherman, my name is Charlene Colva, and I live in West Hills. One thing I would like to ask you about is at the current time there is a bill in the State Senate, the SB 131, and this deals with abuse of children. And if they are abused by someone in the government or public school, they face no charges. But if it's a private institution, then they are to suffer the full extent of the law. Some of these policies are also being filtering through into the federal government. And I would just like to ask you to be aware of them when they cross your desk, so you would vote no against them. So everyone is treated the same under the law. Thank you.
Good. Well, let me address that. A number of the questions tend to relate to state government, what's going on in Sacramento. And usually at my town halls, I just shrug my shoulders and say, well, that's Sacramento. This time I can say, please remember to vote on September 17th. because we've got a major election in the West San Fernando Valley. I know we've had plenty of elections, 2 last year, 2 this year, but on September 17th, the vast majority of the West Valley is in an assembly district that's having a special election, and obviously, I would hope that whoever gets elected would want to make sure that whether it's a public institution or a private institution, the institutions are held accountable if kids are abused. And obviously, nothing, the federal government shouldn't do anything that is contrary to that objective.
I'm going to call out some more numbers. I'm just going to call out the last 3. So it's 388, 380, 439, and 374. If you have any of those numbers, come on down to one of the microphones.
We have another question over here.
Hi, my name is Scott Fitzrandolph, and I'm from Studio City. And the issue that I'd like to ask a question about is what we're calling the EACH Act, the Equitable Access to Care and Health Act, which has 151 sponsors in the House.
Equitable access to
Equitable access to care and health.
care and health.
And we visited in DC in May, I believe, and we're looking for sponsors. We have 151 in the House at this point. It is an exemption to the healthcare, to Obamacare, and it is the same language that was in the that is in the Massachusetts law that allows people with sincerely held religious beliefs to opt out of the Health Care Act. There's already some language in the act for Mennonites and some Amish. I'm a Christian Scientist, and I represent the Christian Science Church in Studio City, and we're not sure how many of our members would opt out. It will not impact the pool because it's a fairly small group of people. It has had no impact on the pool in Massachusetts. But we would like to make sure that if a person wishes to opt out of the Medical Care Act insurance, that they have the right to do it. And we're asking you to be a co-sponsor of that along with 151 of your colleagues. Thank you.
I will take a second look at that, and this issue comes up in 2 different ways. One is if the employer doesn't feel that they should provide coverage for religious reasons for their employees, and on that one I pretty much have lined up with the employees. The second issue is, as you point out, what if an individual does not want to buy a health care plan as an individual participant because they're getting insurance that they're simply never going to use because they're religiously opposed. I will take a look at that. It is interesting that Mennonites are in one category and Christian Science in the other, which seems to be a bit odd. Yeah. I'll be responding only to those who have the floor. Go on.
Well, why don't you go?
Okay, Sherman.
Folks over here, you have interesting questions, but if you have a winning lottery ticket, then you get to ask them. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a little nervous. My question to you, my name is Sharon Stewart. I am a forceful, wrongful terminated employee with the United States Postal Service. Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of myself and many other the employees that has been abused with the company. Some to the degree of sexual harassment, wrongful termination. Quite a few of us have our cases, which mine is right now in Washington. What I am asking, and I'm sure others who have lost their jobs, their homes, their families, how can we or you help us to look into our cases and resolve the issues of the postmaster and the management who get away with sending us and our lives through chaos. I lived here in North Hollywood for over 20 years. I've been forced to move to Irvine, sleep in my car, all kind of things. I love my job. I love my employees. You know, I think that if you and your staff look into these cases with us, it will save the company, the country, all the money that's necessary, probably save a couple of $1 trillion on these management that's sitting now retired and living peacefully in their home. There's been over 22, one thing, there's been over 22 women that has been sexual harassed by management, and these supervisors and postmasters have not did anything to protect these women and other employees, and we need help.
Look forward to looking at this. Most postal employees have some pretty strong unions that ordinarily would fight for somebody, but that may not be your case. And if there's a matter pending before a federal agency, we can push the agency to make a prompt decision and to be aware of all the facts involved. Obviously, sexual harassment in any part of our society is a serious matter and needs to be dealt with according to the rules.
I'm going to call out some numbers. 341, 351, 293, and 384.
Congressman, my name is Bobby Baker. I live in Sherman Oaks.
America's best named city.
If you say so. I think all of us have been bombarded with all kinds of information on Obamacare, positive, negative, until we're pretty well fed up. I have a question, though, that I have been hearing about lately, which bothers me, and that is that Congress and your staffers have just made some kind of a deal that gives you special treatment under Obamacare.
Apparently a number of other people have a similar question. Go ahead.
I just want you to comment on it so that we understand.
Okay. Right now, all federal employees have the same system, whether it's the clerk at the Social Security office, or whether it's a member of Congress, or whether it's my underpaid staff. And compared to those who work for some small employers that can't provide any coverage at all, it's a great deal. Compared to state and federal employees, compared to state and local employees, it's not nearly as good a deal. It's about the same, it's certainly the same Blue Cross card as you get from an awful lot of major employers here. And the subsidy that is provided, that is to say the portion of the cost that the employer pays, is about what other major employers pay, namely around 70%. And if you're fortunate enough to work for a larger or medium-sized company that provides health care, you get about the same deal as federal employees, as Social Security, IRS, or whatever. And I've never heard of anybody leaving a large company and going to work for the federal government because, oh my God, the health care was so much better. That being said, Senator Grassley put a provision in the health care bill, Obamacare, that would make things worse for myself and my staff. And the only question is, how much worse? So we're going to go from a Blue Cross card and system identical to the clerk at the Social Security office to something worse. The only question is, how much worse? Now, if you read the bill one way, it is, we should, yes, I did. I'm not going to respond to questions from the audience. I'm going to respond to those who have the floor. Now, although it was tempting. The language of the bill says that members of Congress and our staff should get covered through the exchanges, which is where you buy insurance if you're a very small employer, or if your employer doesn't provide any coverage or you're unemployed. And we will be buying from those exchanges. And most people would say it'd be better to get the deal that the clerk at the Social Security office gets than to be in the exchange. The question is, will we pay the entire cost of our health care, or will we, like everybody else who has employer partially provided health care, get a subsidy from our employer? The decision was made that we will be subsidized, so we'll be somewhere between where we are now and where we would be if we were unemployed or self-employed. And it'll probably be closer to where we are now than to have no employer help in the coverage at all. But this idea that Obamacare makes things better for members of Congress and our staff, no, it doesn't. The argument of Obamacare was if you like the plan you have, you keep it. That was true for everybody except Congress and members of our staff. And it was an amendment that was put in by somebody who kind of wanted to stick it to his colleagues, and he is going to do that. Now, as to whether it's I'm going to be responding to questions. So this, quote, special deal is a resolution of a dispute as to whether or not there would be any coverage, any federal expenditure toward our coverage. And the decision is made, there will be expenditure. We will be buying through the exchanges, and it will not be much worse than it is now. And I will say this, if the Office of Personnel Management had read the bill the other way, we would be in the same category as those whose employers, usually very small employers, provided 0.0 coverage. And at least we're not. So you can say, I can't say it's certainly not a better deal than we have now. It's not a special deal compared to those who work for big employers, but it's better than nothing, way better than nothing. Yeah, next question.
Hello, my name is Tom
And, let me
Lee.
just add to that last question. And we've got to remember that there are many in the Valley who are getting nothing in the sense that their employers are not contributing anything to health care. So when I say it's better than nothing, that means, I've got to remember that means it's better than the lady that brought me my tea and my eggs this morning. Yeah.
Hello, Congressman. My name is Tom Lee. I live in Studio City. I also work with doctors, a global nonprofit organization called Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. And today, I would like to, as a member, a senior member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and you're also very supportive of human rights. And I would like to ask you about the resolution that your colleague House members already introduced on June 27, expressing concerns about Chinese government's practice, atrocious practice, inhumane practice of forced organ harvesting from living prisoners of conscience, Christians, Falun Gong, Tibetan, Uyghurs, and as of August 2nd, we do have 88 members already co-sponsored the resolution. And I would like to ask you to co-sponsor the resolution to help save lives. And I would like to know your position on that.
I'm looking carefully at the resolution. I have supported every resolution that has passed, and many that have not passed, dealing with human rights in China and Falun Gong in particular. This resolution by Ileana Ross-Layton does contain a few sentences that are extremely strong and that I am now working to try to verify, because I don't want to just co-sponsor a resolution that makes some charges unless I can verify those charges. The most significant of which is a statement that approximately 65,000 Falun Gong adherents have been killed for their organs between 2000 and 2008, and a smaller number of other religious and ethnic minorities may have also been targeted. That claim of 65,000 people being killed by China as Falun Gong members, I need to investigate before I put my name on it. And if there is substantial evidence to support numbers anywhere near that high, I will co-sponsor the resolution. Otherwise, and the Falun Gong is wrongfully oppressed in China, terrible things are done to Falun Gong members. I don't want to undercut the effort to bring human rights to Falun Gong adherents and other religious minorities in China by overstating the case. And 65,000 is a very big number of executions, and I need to see whether there's credible support for that outside of the Falun Gong community, which has urged me to co-sponsor the resolution. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Sobel, and I'm the co-chair of the West Hills Neighborhood Council Senior Committee. One of the questions they forgot to ask is how many of the people in the audience had students that did go to this school? Can I see a raise of hands? Needless to say, many of the people in the West Valley here that had children that went to this school want to stay in this area. Between Woodland Hills and West Hills alone, there's over 40,000 seniors. But it seems that we get nowheres when it comes to getting the Department of Aging and a number of the organizations. We have no senior center in the West Valley. Now, I realize that sometimes it's a city problem, but yet the government gave Simi Valley $9 million to add on to their senior center. We were in there last night dancing in this senior center. Global in Thousand Oaks, the same thing. Each of these individual communities seem to provide for their constituents. But when it comes to the city of Los Angeles in the general, there's just so much in who gets what. And it's time that the West Valley becomes a little more put in with the money, because we're the ones that a lot of our tax dollars go to support these other locations.
Thank you. Obviously, there's a lot of people that would benefit from a senior center here in the West Valley. And West Hills is a new part of my district, which I just got a chance to start representing again. I represented last century and now get to represent again starting in January. Since I represented you last, Congress has abolished earmarks. And it has put me in a position where I can't say, oh, I'm going to go fight and try to get a provision to provide some level of federal funding for a senior center or any center in West Hills or anywhere else. As to what Simi Valley got last decade or so and how much of that was federal, I frankly don't know. Most local things are financed by local government. LA, there's a controversy a bit about the Encino fire station. I realize that Encino is West Valley, but not near as far west as West Hills, and I think I've been working with you on the whole idea of a senior center in the West Hills area. anyway, there was an empty fire station in Encino, and a lot of controversy as to who should be given that and how it should be used. I'm not aware of any unused city or federal property anywhere near the West Hills area. And certainly if we go back into the earmark business, and that's a separate question, which we may get here today, the needs for a West Valley Senior Center will be important to me, but I can promise 100% of all my earmark dollars for 2013 will go to a West Valley Senior Center, and beyond that, all I can do is join you in understanding the need. Thank you.
We've drawn a few more numbers, number 305, number 436, number 386, 345, and 337.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Ronnie. Most of my friends here will agree that the average American is overtaxed at the bottom. I'm sure you feel the same. For years we have been seeing that Washington has been trying to close the loopholes with the corporations taking advantage of things very legally. Unfortunately, that part of the problem never seems to get solved because finance reform has never come into place. So one hand is feeding the other, and we in the meanwhile are paying the penalty because we don't have a say at the top. What is it that you feel needs to be strongly done at this level for things to change to make our average people's lives better?
There is universal agreement that we ought to get rid of tax loopholes, and universal disagreement as to what tax loopholes are. So let me agree with you on the first part and then address that second issue. There's an effort in Washington to say that the home mortgage interest deduction and the property tax deduction and the charity deduction are loopholes. And we could lower taxes if we just stopped those deductions. That, to me, is an attack on the middle class. It's also an attack on the economy of the Valley, because the Valley is very much economically like the rest of America with one giant exception, and that is our homes cost more, and we spend more for them. We make a little bit more money than the rest of the country. We put it all in our homes. And if you eliminate the home mortgage deduction, you cut property tax values, property values by 15 or 20%. Even if you don't own a home, that is very relevant. Because if somebody who does own a home hears that the home down the street had to slash its price by 15% in order to sell, and they still haven't sold it, maybe they're gonna cut another 5%. The people who aren't selling their home aren't gonna go out to a restaurant and spend money unless that restaurant has golden arches in front of it. So the economy of the whole area is dependent upon us maintaining reasonable home prices. As to where I think we should get the revenue, we have seen the corporate income tax decline as a revenue stream as business has become more global. Let me pose a question to you this way. Assume that a television, this is real life, a television is designed in Japan, manufactured in Taiwan, and sold in California, and that the company doing this is able to make $1 billion. Where was the $1 billion earned? Where is it subject to tax? Okay. Designed in Japan, manufactured in Taiwan, sold in California. The answer is obvious. The profits are taxable in the Cayman Islands. That kind of trickery in the area of international taxation is particularly prevalent. It's a little bit more complicated than my example illustrates. But there's a way to generate $1 trillion of additional revenue over the next decade, and more than that, by cutting the Gordian knot, by eliminating all of the trickery in that question. Right now, the IRS starts looking at what the invoice price is when a company sells the TV to itself. Well, that's obviously subject to manipulation. If two companies are owned by the same parent corporation, the transfer price is going to be set to minimize taxes. So there's a system called worldwide unitary, which all the major corporations in the world hate. California was able to use it successfully up until the mid-1990s. And if we adopted it at the federal level, we'd collect an awful lot more revenue, and we'd have a much fairer system. And we'd eliminate incentives to take jobs overseas. And we'd be up against all of the major international corporations in an effort to try to adopt that. So I'm the chief advocate in Congress for worldwide unitary taxation. I wish I could promise that in a contest between me and all of international business, I'm the favorite. But that's the kind of tax adjustment that I think is called for in order to generate the revenue we need. Thank you.
My name is Karen Kenny. I'm coordinator for the San Fernando Valley Patriots here in Nevada. And while I do appreciate that you've read the bill of 2,000 pages, it's the 19,000 pages of regulations under the Affordable Care Act that need scrutiny. That being said, when I spoke to your colleagues in the Ways and Means in June regarding one of the key scandals in Washington right now, what struck me as I've watched your website and other congressional websites is that you have an opportunity here to be a voice for clarity regarding ethics, equal application of the law, and transparency regarding all of these scandals, IRS, AP, NSA, all of them. And I wonder what's keeping you from doing that.
I thank you for thinking that I can play that big national role. I try to speak out on the right side. I guess our webpage could use a bit more up-to-date content, but in terms of speaking out on the issues I think are important, I think we're here and I'm doing that right now. As to the NSA, I voted for the Amash Amendment. As for Obamacare, I'll take a minute on that. There's a lack of focus on how the system was deteriorating before the Health Care Act was passed, or the Obamacare Act was passed. The first, a couple of things to keep in mind. First, this whole controversy is not about staying well, which is probably more important than the kind of medical care you get. I would trade my right to go see a physician for the next 12 months if I could lose about 20 pounds. I haven't done the scientific work on that, but I bet y'all that the 20 pounds is going to cost me more longevity than all the doctors I see in the next year are going to add to it. So we need to focus on being well rather than just healthcare. Then on healthcare, it's the efficiency of the overall healthcare system. That prices just keep going up and up. So much healthcare is provided in the last 6 months of life compared to everything else. There are a lot of things about the healthcare system that ought to be improved. All of our political attention is on health insurance, which is just how to pay for it. As to the health insurance problem, before Obamacare, we had a system that was unraveling, and here's how it unraveled. We had about 30, 35 million uninsured people. So they waited till they got sick. Then they went to the emergency room. And then if you've ever seen a bill from the emergency room, 5,000 is the starting point, and then it goes up from there. So you send a $5,000 bill to somebody who didn't have enough money to buy health insurance. They're not going to pay it. They can't possibly pay it. So what does the hospital do? It writes off the bill. So now the hospital is stuck with 5 or 10 or 15 grand of uncompensated care every time somebody comes to the emergency room and doesn't have a card. So what do? They raise their prices on everybody else. Now the aspirin costs $11 instead of $8. What does that do? It raises the amount they charge to Blue Cross for those who are insured. So what does Blue Cross and the other insurance companies do? Well, they raise their rates. And then what do they do after that? They say, we just raised our rates to cover the additional cost. How about some profit? So they raise their rates a little bit beyond that. Now, you have employers, and people don't see this because employers are paying 50, 80% of the cost. The employer gets the bill, oh my God, look at how the healthcare cost has gone up. So what do? Well, many of them pay it. But a few of them say, okay, we're just not going to provide health coverage. And so now you have 37 million people unemployed, or uncovered. Those people go to the emergency room. They get the uninsured coverage. The hospital has more people providing thousands of dollars of care for which they're not paid. They raise the price of the aspirin to $17 per aspirin. Blue Cross and other insurance companies raise their rates, and then they raise them again. More companies drop. That cycle was in full swing in 2008 and 2009. And had we simply kept what we had, we could not have kept what we had. Because that system was unraveling. The only way we're going to be able to provide health care for every American who has the right to show up in an emergency room is to make sure that everybody has coverage. And if I look, excuse me, you do not have the floor. And if, hello. And so,
Shut up or get out!
this is our town hall. The people who should be speaking are those who are recognized for the floor. If somebody wants to speak at great length, they should book their own town hall, and I'll do what I can with El Camino Charter High School to give anyone else here their own forum. You don't hijack somebody else's forum. Now, so the point I'm making is, the system we had before was not just bad for the 35 million who didn't have coverage, but was unraveling. If you, God forbid, you had an emergency, you show up in an emergency room that's crowded with a bunch of people who wouldn't be there if only they had had the coverage to go somewhere else. You have a hospital raising its rates dramatically every year. You have dramatic increases. And it's easy to say, well, I don't care about those 35 million people that don't have coverage. But the way that system was going, it was going to be 70 and 80, and a lot of people in this room that have coverage today and thought the old system was just great, and their employer was paying almost all the costs, and they didn't think it was that expensive. A lot of those folks would have found themselves among the uninsured. So the old system wasn't working. The new system has some bugs, and let's go on to the next question.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for having this forum, opportunity to come and express our opinions. I want to talk about the infrastructure. I want to encourage you to walk with your colleagues to have a fair share of the federal dollars come to the state, and for you to advocate for a generous support of that, portion of that, to come to the valley, to help repair the bridges over the LA River, the roads, in support of our local councilman, Englinger, who has put forth a plan to bring the streets up to code, and also extend the subway system from Sherman Oaks to West LA. Thank you.
Couldn't agree with you more. I've been a strong proponent of 3010, a system to allow Los Angeles County to take the projects that it would do over the next 30 years and could pay for over the next 30 years, borrow some money from the federal government and do it over the next 10 years. We need the jobs. More importantly, we need the roads, and we need the subway. And the next big project for Los Angeles is from the Orange Line to West Los Angeles, connecting up with the existing, I guess they're calling it Purple Line. So that is very important, and let's move on to the next question.
Hi. Two quick comments. Nice people that blurt out their comments, interrupt the congressman and call them names. Please stop. It's not productive, and it doesn't help you understand your comments, okay? If you want to yell at them, do it in the parking lot. Okay. Second thing, Obamacare has helped me and my family greatly. They will help it next year. I deal with doctors and have done so for the past 35 years. It is the most destructive thing the healthcare industry, this country has ever experienced.
What was it? I missed one word there.
It will be the most destructive thing done to this healthcare system that this country will ever face. As soon as they raise the, could you repeat that, please? Obamacare is the most destructive thing done to the healthcare industry. This lady says, I haven't seen the benefits yet. My son was put back on insurance. That's a benefit. Please, don't talk unless you know what you're talking about.
Oh, well.
I have a different...
Sir, you have the floor. What's your question?
My question is simple. How many people were expected to be granted amnesty to in 1986, and how many people were actually granted amnesty?
You know, I've been focused on the problems that we face today. I believe the number was quite a bit larger than expected. The number of persons in this country without documentation now, I think is pretty well agreed to be between 11 and 12 million. Those who oppose the Senate bill put the number in that range. Those who support the Senate bill put the number in that range. I wasn't in government in 1986. I have no idea whether there were misestimates then, but perhaps that number of 11 to 12 million is the only thing, and I mean the only thing, that the proponents and opponents of the Senate bill tend to coalesce around.
I do not have the questions. I don't know the answer to already. The answer is they were expected. Use the mic. Give me the mic.
No. Well, we're not letting people ask follow-up questions. I'll just stipulate that the estimate made in 1986 is known by this gentleman to be way off, and it was way off. And that was 1986. Go on.
Congressman? Over here, sir.
Oh,
Gotcha. My concerns have a lot to do with our civil liberties being stripped. I've taken the same oath you have toward our Constitution. There's no wiggle room in it to manipulate it in a light that you agree with in another way. I would like to ask you to no longer support or try to push through any legislation that strips or erodes any of the liberties or freedoms of Americans. I want to say, no more killing of the innocents in our names. Let's stop this craziness. Let's get the hell out of these countries and leave them alone. If you go look at the real footage of the protests going on in Syria right now, in Libya right now, it's all anti-America. They blame us for the people we put in. Now we're going to go send more weapons and keep this thing going. While we support the Muslim Brotherhood, we're paying for both sides of a war that's slaughtering innocents.
So let me ask you a question. The answer is, I agree with you, but not 100%. You first brought up civil liberties, where I pointed out that I voted earlier on what is the seminal vote dealing with civil liberties. As to our foreign policy, I began this presentation warning of going to Asia to find additional dragons to slay. At the same time, I do think that we face a genuine threat from international terrorism. I do think we need to be vigilant. I do think that we have an opportunity to play a constructive role in the world. And so, while I may not support every effort to involve ourselves in the world, and I want to be cautious about what we do and minimize the costs, you cannot. I'm not an isolationist by any means. So, I think America is a force for good in the world, and I think we have to be careful as to what we do.
Roll, please.
I'm Linda Forsythe from West Hills, and I'm going to turn 65 in a couple of months. And my question is, why does Washington feel it's proper to penalize someone who was stupid enough during their working years to save for retirement with increased Medicare premiums, which during my lifetime will probably top $1,000 a month?
I'm unfamiliar with, yeah, there is a bit of a sliding scale on Medicare premiums. I'm not aware of it being $1,000 a month difference. Well, we have a certain amount of inflation, and if we get that inflation, you know, by the...
But you're penalizing people that save how they work.
Any kind of income tax or means testing of a benefit penalizes the productive and the thrifty. On the other hand, giving government benefits to those with high incomes and large savings tends to be questionable as well. And so we have to reach a balance between when we provide a benefit without regard to someone's financial need, and when we provide a benefit that is at least some reduction in benefit or increase in cost, whether it's our income tax system, whether it's Medicare, et cetera. And we reach a balance between those two. Now, I'm hoping that you and I live long enough for the $1,000 figure to be correct, but for that to be correct, you would have to see an awful lot of inflation in your lifetime. And I'm hoping we don't have fast inflation, but I'm hoping you and I both live a long time. So there will be a fair amount of inflation over the next 30 or 40 years. I hope you and I are around to see it. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Lynn Woodland Hills. Just one comment, Congressman, with all due respect, we are your employer, you work for us, and we can fire you.
And firing me has been suggested on many occasions.
I don't want to fire you, I just want you to understand that we do have opinions that may vary. And the problem is, whenever we have a problem in whether it's in California alone, whether it's across the United States, we seem to want to handle it with a machete. We need to handle everything with just a knife. We have problems with Obamacare and our health care, and you come up with Obamacare. Thank you, Democrats. We have problems with immigration. You want to change the entire system. We have an immigration system, sir. Let's start with that first. That we have. You are a California representative, and I ask you, sir, as a California representative, why are you allowing senators from New York and Florida to handle our border states? You are our representative in California. You should be handling our immigration problem here. It is having a very big problem.
Let me address this. First, we need one nationwide immigration policy. if we say New York senators shouldn't be able to pass a law for the United States, and we're going to have immigration policies based, then we could have an unlimited number of people from any country come in as long as they came across the Niagara Falls border into the state of New York. I don't want, no. You need one nationwide policy for immigration. We're not going to have the New York, we're not going to have New York decide what the immigration policy is for those coming across the northern border and have California decide and then tell Kansas that they don't have any say at all in what happens in our country. As to our current immigration law, it is not working. That is why we should change it. The best, we have 11 million people in the United States living in the shadows.
That's not true.
You do not have the floor, and you're taking up the time of people who got the tickets. Okay, please sit down. Now let me continue talking about our immigration policy. We have 350 million legal border crossings every year. Half, because we have people visiting Mexico and coming back. There are people in Texas who just buy their gasoline in Mexico and come back on their way to work. We have people who live in Windsor and people who live in Detroit driving back and forth. Half the people in this country illegally came here legally, crossed the border legally. And that is an increasing part of the illegal immigration. So in order to have an immigration system that makes sense, you need internal enforcement. There is no internal enforcement. It was promised in 1986. Let me describe the internal enforcement. If you go to Burger King, we as a society are serious that if you buy a burger, you're going to pay for the burger. You present a card. That card to buy that burger has a Visa logo on it, but more importantly, a hologram, a picture, off-site electronics. Maybe if your credit card was stolen, somebody could buy a few burgers for about 6 hours, then boom, it's closed down. That's because we as a society are serious. We want to enforce our laws about credit cards. That is, that our law is buy the burger, pay for the burger. Well, what if you go around back of the Burger King and you say, I want a job? What kind of card do you provide? There are, I believe, 9 different kinds of documents, none of them with a hologram, none of them with off-site computerized verification. As a result, I could say that if it costs you more than $50 to get phony ID sufficient to get a job, you are being ripped off. So we do not have internal control. We have a joke system that we require employers to use. A few use E-Verify, but it's not required. And it's got some problems that need to be worked out. So with half the illegal immigrants coming here legally, with 350 million border crossings, legal border crossings, meaning that a few people may be able to slip across the border no matter what you do. With no internal enforcement, with 11 million people living in the shadows, it is very hard to say that if you just built a longer fence, that we'd have a perfect system. We need a better system. I support a better system. Thank you. Yes.
Congressman Sherman, thank you for visiting us and thank you for taking our questions. I'm going to shift this again to a foreign policy.
Thank you.
I'm familiar that you know about the Armenian genocide. My wife and I are the children of survivors of the Armenian genocide. We lost many relatives in there, and our parents migrated from Ottoman Empire to Syria because they were pushed out. And when they arrived there close to 100 years ago, they were welcomed by the Arabs in Syria with open arms, and we've been living peacefully there all that time. With this insurgents and 18 from different countries, supported by the American allies and armed by them, now our relatives are living in there and literally in a living hell. My heart sank when I watched on television or on the internet when the insurgents were fighting on an Armenian old age home, and while they were doing that were machetes with machine guns, with you name it, and they were yelling Allahu Akbar and celebrating. And these are the people that we're sending arms to, and in person, our relatives have told us on Skype, on telephone, that they witnessed all those. Now, there's close to 40 churches burned, and many organizations were destroyed. Why are we sending arms and we keep talking, those are freedom fighters? They're destroying, they're hijacking, they're raping, they're asking for ransom. I'm puzzled. What would the government do to support the Christian minorities and other minorities that are suffering?
Thank you. First, thanks for once again reminding us of the first genocide of the 20th century, where 1.5 million Armenians were slaughtered. Second, the confusion in Syria is very hard to deal with because there are so many sides and many of them do not deserve our support. We've seen on our television screens today the effects of gas, perhaps sarin gas, killing over 1,000 people, almost certainly by the Assad regime. At the same time, as you point out, the opponents of the Assad regime include some Al-Qaeda affiliated elements that are attacking the Christian communities. I've been personally involved in the 2 bishops who were kidnapped, one from the Syriac Church, one from the Greek Orthodox Church. The Christians in Syria face a particularly difficult problem. We have several national interests. One is to make sure that the use of chemical weapons against the civilian population is demonstrated to be not a successful action. And if indeed, as appears relatively clear, Assad is behind this large-scale use of chemical weapons, then we need to take some action to demonstrate to the next tyrant that crossing of that line will be met. The second issue is how we work. I mean, when you look at Assad, he has not been a huge problem for the Christian communities in Syria. But he is an ally of Hezbollah. He's an ally of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He oppresses his own people, and he's killed close to 100,000 of them over the last year, and a couple of years. So this is someone who does not deserve to remain in power. At the same time, the folks you refer to, the Al-Nusra Front, etc., do not deserve to get power either. And we can somewhat increase the power of some of the better elements in Syria. But ultimately, the outcome in Syria is going to be dependent upon events inside Syria, and it is terrible. But I can't say that the restoration of the Assad regime represents truth, justice, and freedom. It certainly does not. And I wish I could point to a particular course of action that would protect the people of Syria. both the Assad regime and, as you point out, many of his opponents are quite evil. What? We can probably take, I think we're going to go about 6-7 minutes over time, so we can take 2 more questions.
Let's take questions number 368 and 365.
I should point out, again, we'll be back here September 15th. These tickets won't do you any good then. We'll have different tickets then. It's, these aren't rain checks. But I look forward to not only the next 2 questions, but the town hall on September 15th. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Rosie Press. I was a military wife for 21 years. I was a hostage in Iran, and this country is in a war zone. And because of the Democrats and Obama, the men in Benghazi were killed, and we knew it was going to happen, and the terrorists told us we are the Muslim Brotherhood, which is in the White House. We had the IRS.
Just, you know, you were one of the 80-some...
No, in 78. I'm the one that got the plane to come in where the 40,000 Americans got out.
So were you with our embassy then in town?
Yes, my husband Michael Preston had the aggressor squadron. We've been in the National War College, Fort Leavenworth, Area 51. I know about everything. If you want to know something, just call my house. And we better all speak up, or we're not going to have an America. So why, as a Democrat and a Jewish man, correct, are you watching this as our country goes down with Obama? I cannot believe this.
As I pointed out at the beginning, our purpose here is to discuss issues, not just yell for or against Obama. As to Benghazi, the person who understood Libya the most was the ambassador himself. And it was not knowable that, I mean, in hindsight, every time, it was knowable that it was a dangerous thing for our ambassador to go to Benghazi. He thought it was an acceptable risk. As
The terrorists always tell us. They told us for a year they were going to
I can't, I'm only responding to the first question. Folks, I will say this, the terrorists warn us of 1,001 out of every 1 attack. That is to say, there are 1,000 false alarms for every actual alarm. Certainly the ambassador was the person in the best position to evaluate, and I'm not gonna respond further. Let's go on to the last question. The last question.
Forgive me if I read it because I want to get it right.
Okay.
Because this administration labeled the Fort Hood massacre as workplace violence, the wounded and families of those killed are not receiving the benefits that they would be awarded if this was an act of terrorism. Do you believe Major Hassan, after yelling Allahu Akbar and shooting over 30 soldiers, was an act of terrorism, or do you think it was workplace violence?
I agree with you on the foreign policy. I disagree with you on the legal tort liability. Obviously, it was an act of terrorism. We do not have a policy in this country of fully indemnifying everyone from the costs of terrorism. So, absent a special act of Congress, and of course we did one for the victims in New York and the Pentagon 9/11, but we haven't done one for every act of terrorism. If you are a victim of terrorism and there is not a special act of Congress, you don't get compensated. If it's workplace violence, you're more likely to get compensated. So what you may describe as a misnomer was certainly not adverse to the interests of the families of those who died at the hands of Major Hassan. So It's terrorism, it was violence at a workplace, and it is that second characterization that is more in the legal interests of the families that we all want to take care of. Folks, thank you for coming here. I want to thank my staff, Matt DeBombe and his entire crew for being here, and look forward to seeing many of you at the free concert in Warner Center Park. Thank you very much.